Episode 9, a Brazilian psychoanalyst, pilot, and pizza delivery boy. My guest on this episode is Guilherme Magnoler. Guilherme is one of my English students. He is a practicing psychoanalyst and the founder of the Brazilian Institute of Psychoanalysis, where he teaches courses that are enjoyed by more than 30,000 students. In his free time, he enjoys playing chess, and in his younger years spent a lot of his time in the clouds flying gliders as a qualified pilot and instructor. Guilherme is one of those people who seems to unexpectedly appear in your life just at the right time. Our friendship, along with the conversations and connections he has shared, have been very valuable to me for helping the people I care about most. His knowledge and passion for learning about the mind is truly impressive, along with the kindness and modesty he displays as a human being. As you'll hear at the beginning of this podcast, I rather embarrassingly mispronounced the word psychoanalyst. So yes, Guilherme is a professional psychoanalyst who practices psychoanalysis to help his patients. You'll also notice that Guilherme speaks good English, but at times he does make some mistakes. So for example, he sometimes confuses when to use the word much and many. So in the transcript, I've made corrections for any grammatical mistakes or pronunciations that Guilherme has made. So I really recommend downloading the free transcript available at schoolofduda.com. And you can learn from the mistakes of Guilherme, and also it's just a great tool for studying and developing your English while listening to the podcast. So I really recommend that. Okay, so it's a real pleasure to have my student and friend as one of the first guests on this podcast. May I introduce you to Guilherme Magnoler. Okay, Guilherme, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. Yeah, well, the pleasure's all mine. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. And for your hospitality, here we are in your studio apartment in Sao Paulo, drinking a very nice Malbec red wine.
Here we go.
So cheers.
Cheers.
So let's dive straight in to the interview, to the conversation. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, I've already explained that you're my English student,
Yes.
And you're a psychoanalyst, you're a psychoanalyst, right?
Psychoanalyst, yes.
Yeah, and I know that when you were younger, you worked in London as a pizza delivery guy.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So how old were you when you?
22, 23. Yes.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah, so I think this is interesting because, you're kind of a successful person, very intellectual now, and it just goes to show, you never know who might be delivering your pizza.
It's true. That's funny. Yes.
So my first question is, what was the best and the worst thing about this experience?
Yeah, sure. And we never know where life is going to lead us also, because I went to London to learn English to become a better pilot, as I used to pilot planes at that time, and then ended up being a psychoanalyst. But anyway, in Pizza Hut, what was the question again?
Yeah, so my question is, what was the best and the worst thing about your experience being a pizza delivery guy?
Yes. I went to London, I think you don't know that, to stay for 6 months. And then I realized it wasn't enough to learn the language. And I decided to stay longer. At the first month in London, I did some very underpaid jobs, like cleaning, washing dishes, things like that. So start working at Pizza Hut delivering pizzas was an upgrade for me. And the best thing about it was that at that moment, as a 22-year-old boy, it was a very good job for me. And what was difficult about it was that delivering pizzas, driving in the cold, in the rain, it's kind of dangerous. And I almost had an accident, but there was some nice other things, such as receiving tips and extra money that helped me a lot.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this time, working in London, it really helped you improve your English?
Yes, it did actually, because in the pizza place where I used to work in Maida Vale, it was a unit that made only deliveries, takeaways. They didn't have a restaurant. And so I worked with many different people from different places, but there were no Brazilians in there. So it helped me a lot to learn the language.
Yeah, no, it's funny. So my brother-in-law, who's Brazilian, also was a pizza delivery guy in London for a while.
Was he?
And it's funny as well because he has a very good job. He's very serious professional. So it just shows how many Brazilians go there and deliver pizzas.
At a young age.
To learn English.
Yes, with one objective. Yes, one goal, which is to learn English. And that is more important than the job you do.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm here talking to you, which wouldn't be possible if I had been there.
Yeah. Okay, great. So my next question I want to talk to you about, ask you, what is psychoanalysis? So this is your area of expertise.
Yeah.
So can you explain in a simple way for our audience, what is psychoanalysis?
Thanks for the simple way. It's such a complex and a huge question, but in a simple way, psychoanalysis is science which was developed to treat people that were mental sick, but then ended up being used to human beings in general. I mean, you go to a psychoanalyst when you want to understand about yourself. You don't have to be sick, you don't have to be ill, you don't have to have any major problems to go to a psychoanalysis. I believe it's, summing up, I believe it's the art of knowing yourself. We dedicated many hours to learning a language, to learning philosophy, to learning how things work, and sometimes we forget about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And psychoanalysis is when you go to a therapist and take a time to know yourself.
Yeah.
Because many of our inner world is unconscious to us. Therefore, we need to work to reach these unconscious ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's what psychoanalysis does.
Great. So basically we spend our lives learning about all these different subjects that are important, but most people neglect learning about the self. And so would you recommend, you said basically anyone can go and do psychoanalysis, regardless of whether you have a mental illness or you're sick. You would recommend it for everybody, or?
Yes. Look, I'm going to tell you this as a friend, because you said you were my friend when you introduced me, and I see you as my friend. I don't tell that usually because some people don't get it, but I'm going to tell you that. I believe everybody should go to a psychoanalyst, not because everybody is problematic enough to go to a psychoanalyst, but I believe that human beings have a kind of a nature that when we get to the end of our development process, like when we get to be adults, we always get there traumatized in some way. and we have to carry on that development. The developmental psychology, it shouldn't end when you become adults. I mean, there's a lot to learn, a lot to improve, a lot to know about ourselves. It should be a part of our lives, to carry on the process of being a better human being. And for that, you need to investigate your own thoughts, unconscious feelings, and so on. So yes, I recommend it to everybody.
Okay, cool. So I remember, I think the last lesson we talked about a Freudian slip. So I thought, this could be an interesting thing to talk about and explain to the audience. So can you explain what a Freudian slip is, again, in a very simple way? And do you have any examples that you can share?
Yeah, can you explain your students what a slip is?
A slip. So, well, the verb to slip is when you basically fall over. So if you imagine the floor is wet and soapy and you slip over and you fall over. Okay, so it's like an accident, it's a mistake.
It's a mistake, yes, perfect. So a Freudian slip is a mistake that you make because of the unconscious. Because Freud and all psychoanalysts, we believe we have an unconscious mind that defines some of our decisions, acts. So you make these slips when your unconscious talks, even though you don't want to. Like you want to say something, you say something else. You want to hear something, you hear something else. You want to write something, you write something else. Like you want to take care of your cell phone because it's expensive, but suddenly you let it fall down and break because in some way you wanted it to break because you want a new phone, a new cell phone. So we make a slip. A Freudian slip is any small accident that happens in language, in forgetting, in the small acts of daily life that are determined by the unconscious desires. Like you forget a pair of boots in a bus or in a coach when you're traveling because really you want to buy new boots, let's say. That's an example of a...
So it's like your unconscious mind working to get what you want or express what you really want to say against your conscious mind.
Against your conscious... Exactly. That word against is perfect because it's all related to the conflict between a conscious intention and an unconscious one. Because you have this conflict, these slips happens.
Yeah. So in English, anyway, often when people talk about a Freudian slip, it has some sort of like sexual connotation.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it since we spoke about it, and I realized, I remembered a really good one this year. There was George W. Bush, the ex-president of the United States, and he gave a speech, I think it was a couple of months ago, about the war in Russia. And he was condemning Putin and the war in Russia and the kind of illegal invasion of Ukraine. But when he came to give the speech, he said something like, it was just terrible, the illegal invasion of Iraq. And he said Iraq, and everyone's just like, oh my God, that's just the worst thing you can possibly say in that moment.
Yeah, because he was the one who invaded Iraq.
Well, yeah, and obviously a lot of people allege it was an illegal invasion of Iraq, and we won't go into politics here, but that was, to me, that was a clear example of a Freudian slip.
That's a perfect example. That's a perfect one, yes.
And perhaps like one of the worst of all time, I think, considering the consequences.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question is, can you talk about what the ego is, again in a simple way, and how is your relationship with your ego?
Well, there is some misunderstanding about the ego among people that don't study psychoanalysis. because sometimes people say that's an ego thing, trying to say that the person is too preoccupied with himself. Yes, but that's not really correct, because the ego itself has no doesn't carry the concept of ego doesn't carry that connotation. Can you say connotation?
Yeah,
The word?
yeah.
It doesn't carry that meaning. The ego is a structure of apparatus, of the psychic apparatus, along with the superego and the id and the external reality. They are all related to each other all the time. I mean, in interaction with each other all the time. And the ego has to manage these three other instances, like the external reality, the desires, and the superego, which is our conscience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that part of us that says you can't do it. So the work of the ego is to manage to try to make those parts happy without too many conflict. However, when the ego is invested with too much energy, which Freud calls the libido, there's a phenomenon that is called narcissism. The narcissism for the psychoanalysis is when the ego is invested with the libido. Instead of investing our energy, our libido, our sexuality and everything in other people, we invest it in ourselves, in our ego. That's when we appear
narcissistic.
Yeah. We behave as a narcissistic person.
Yeah.
That's what people mean when they say somebody has an ego, a big ego, or a huge ego, or something like that. It's not, it's used in a different way in psychoanalysis, but it's related to.
So like Donald Trump has a big ego type of thing in a narcissistic way.
Yes, in a narcissistic way.
Okay, so let me...
yes, that's interesting, because if you say somebody has a big ego, if you are talking about the psychoanalytical concept, it means that person is really balanced.
Yeah, it's a good thing then.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to...
In the common language, like the day-to-day, when they say, he's got a big ego, it's kind of a negative quality where they're kind of self-absorbed and concerned about their own image. And
their own image. In psychoanalysis, we say it's his narcissism and not the ego.
Okay, so let me just try and unpack all those terms, because anyone who doesn't know anything about psychology or psychoanalysis might struggle. So let me see if I understand. So basically we have the id, which is like the passion. Kind of the passion, the animal, the baby with desires. We have the superego, which is like our conscience, which is always trying to make us behave and be correct and sort of controlling. Control the id. And you have the ego, which is managing these things and managing reality.
In between them, trying to manage them.
Yeah. Okay. So back to my original question. How is your relationship with your ego? Do you feel I don't know if this is the right question, but are you aware of your ego? Are you feel balanced? Or?
Well, I still have a long way to improve. But if you compare myself, I'm 51 now, to the young Guilherme, when I used to live in London, for instance, I have matured well enough, and I have a bigger ego, in the sense of that I can deal with my problems in a better way. And I have a less narcissistic ego than I used to. So, but I still have a a long path to improvement.
Okay, so you've developed, you've evolved, but you have a long way you'd like to go still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with the results so far. I mean, I think I am in a moment of the process that is related to my age, which is something that I think is good enough.
Yeah, cool. Okay, my next question. I'm curious to know what you think about free will. So I'm going to try and define it here. So free will in philosophy and science is considered the power or capacity of humans to make decisions, perform actions independently of any predetermined fate or destiny. So it's something I'm always curious about. I've read a few books about it. But the kind of the debate is, does free will exist or is it an illusion? And people who say it exists, believe that we have the ability to make our own decisions and we're, can determine our own destiny. And then people who think it's an illusion would say, no, it's all like a predetermined fate or destiny and we have no control over it ultimately.
Well, it's such a James question, complexity, and a difficult one. I mean, you can, as you were asking me the question, I thought that you can consider it in two different ways. One related to religion, and the other one related to the culture that can influence us. I mean, if talking about religion and the fate, destiny, I would say to you that I believe in free will completely, because I don't believe in God, I don't believe in destiny, I don't believe in fate. Like, my godness is probability. Like, if people say about the miracles, it was a miracle that one person survived when he had like a very small amount of chance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are many people in the world with a small amount of chance of surviving. One of them is going to survive.
Yeah, like a miracle happens every day, right?
Yeah.
When you've got 8 billion people on the planet.
Yes, I mean, it's probability. It's a much less complex explanation for all the miracles. I mean, if everybody survived in an airplane crashed, I would believe in a miracle. So I don't believe in fate. On the other hand, you have the culture where you are born in, and the things you listen, the things you learn, the things you... I mean, do you really have free will when you live in Brazil, when you listen to Radio Globo, when you learn all those things? It's very difficult to, go through it. And
so you're saying, well, like we're like a product of our environment. So whatever environment we're in, we're absorbing all this culture, information.
Yes.
And are we freely forming our own opinions, or are we just exposed and then repeating?
Yes, I think this is a much more complex issue. But even though I do believe we have a free will, I do. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So one of the books I read was by a philosopher called Sam Harris, and he's actually an atheist. And but his book is about why free will is an illusion. And if you read his book, I read his book, and after it, I'm like totally convinced. But then I speak to another philosopher or read about another philosopher who believes in free will, and I'm easily convinced the other way. So yeah, I'm still, it's something that I'm sort of trying to learn about and consider.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I mean, I say I do believe in free will because I don't know much about it. Maybe maybe if I go deep into it, I may find myself in the same situation you found yourself? I mean, it's such a difficult question.
I often think, is it like just semantics? Like, we're just talking about words, and actually we all mean the same thing. But it's quite a deep or complex maybe topic. So maybe I should do an episode just about free will.
Yes, you should do. Yes.
So apologize if anyone's listening
to
and they're like,
crazy.
What are you talking about? Like, Okay, so next question. Is there a book or a blog or a podcast or YouTube channel in English that you would recommend to this audience?
Well, yourself.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well,
your School of Duda, I would recommend for anyone that's studying English. And also, there is I don't listen to podcasts. I don't have that habit. But I do listen to BBC Breakfast Morning with Vanessa Feltz. Do you know Vanessa Feltz? It's a journalist.
Yeah, I know her.
Yeah, she's... what I like about Vanessa Feltz is that very different to the Brazilian journalists. She tries, of course, she not always succeeds, but she tries to be neutral. She tries to put questions to the interviewers that somebody else would be thinking. People may say that what you are saying is not correct because of this or because of that.
Yeah.
And she does it no matter who is being interviewed. And well, it's in English, it's a British accent, and she's great. I mean, Vanessa Feltz, you can hear it in BBC and in the internet.
So you feel like she is very connected to her truth and her opinions, and she challenges.
She's very connected to the fact that there is not only one opinion about a subject, even though it doesn't matter if the person who is being interviewed is left-handed or right-handed. Can you say left-handed in English to say about politics?
Like when you say left wing or right wing or left or right,
left or right.
Yeah.
She will always put questions like trying to trying to test the what the person is saying, even though she doesn't believe in it. She will say, well, some people may think that you are saying is not correct because of...
So her approach is
is kind of neutral.
Yeah.
Of course, she doesn't achieve this goal all the time, but she's the best I've ever seen doing it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So growing up as a British person, we are all kind of like proud of the BBC, and I don't know whether that's something that we're indoctrinated with from childhood, but a lot of people consider it to be a very credible and high standard news channel around the world, and I believe it is. Like, I think the quality and the credibility of the journalism is very good. However, what I find is interesting is, since I lived outside of the UK and living in Brazil for the last 10 years, I do see kind of propaganda angle, from the government message, which I didn't see before when I lived in the country. It's like when you're in the bubble and you're only exposed to that. And now I listen to news channels from all over the world, and I still, I still watch the BBC, and I still think it's very good. And, you could argue that it's better than other news channels, absolutely. But it's interesting that I didn't see the propaganda before, and now it's like, it's often very obvious to me. So it'd be interesting to see Vanessa Feltz, right?
Yeah, you should listen to her.
Yeah.
Even to correct my view, because I'm in another position. I'm seen as a Brazilian. and maybe I don't see the the propaganda and the
It's subtle,
background.
very
Yeah.
subtle.
Yes.
Probably.
Maybe I can't read it,
Yeah.
or maybe I can. But compared to the Brazilian journalists, she's kind of neutral.
Yeah. Cool. What most concerns or excites you about the future?
Concerns. Well, I don't know if I have too many concerns about the future. I'm a little selfish when it comes to this kind of preoccupation, because I have so little faith in human beings, especially in Brazil. So I'm not the kind of person that roots for a
For a politician.
for a politician, or believes in a party in politics, or that Brazil is going to become this or that. I just don't believe in it. Maybe I'm a pessimistic in that way, I don't know, but I don't get involved.
But that pessimism for, say, politics in Brazil extends to the rest of the world, or you're just talking about in the context of Brazil?
I'm talking about Brazil.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I wouldn't have that in somewhere else, because I don't know, but it's specifically about Brazil. So I don't see things changing here in the next 100 or 200 years. So I don't worry about much about it. Of course, I have the concerns about myself, my family, my friends, people I like, about being a better person, even though I don't worry much about politics and so on. I try to be a better person myself, try to do my contribution to the country. And you said something about expectations too, didn't you?
Yeah, just what concerns and excites you?
Well, I am excited about the future. I can say that. I am excited because I have so much plans, so much.
So many plans.
So many plans. Thanks. So many plans, so many jobs to do, so many things that I want to do, place I want to meet, to go, and I have, especially my professionally, I have some things that I want to achieve, and I have them in my mind for the next 10, 20 or 30 years already. The path I want to go, the aims. So I'm really excited about the future. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I mean, talking about Brazilian politics, like without going into it, but my experience, so living here for 10 years, 99% probably of Brazilians I meet are like you. They're sort of pessimistic about the future of Brazil based on, the government, basically.
Yeah.
And I've come to sort of share your opinion, and, it seems like it'll take generations to change the political system because of the corruption and the inefficiency. Yeah. And I feel like maybe the only hope is kind of an outside influence. So if there are new technologies or new companies that can offer services to Brazilians that can improve their lives, then perhaps that's one way that you can quickly improve the lives of people in Brazil. But if you're waiting for the government to do something, you might be waiting a very long time.
Yes, it's been like that for 500 years. So maybe something coming from outside. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a new technology that radically, transforms things. It's accessible to all the people for education.
I mean, it has to be
education, healthcare,
yes.
These things.
Some new technology related to education. I mean, that's the only way, really.
Yeah. Okay, final question. If you could go for a coffee with anyone in the world, from the past, present, or future, who would it be?
Yes, there's someone I would love to have a coffee with. And he's not from the past. He's from the present, and he's a young man in his 30s. His name is Magnus Carlsen from Norway.
Chess player.
Chess player, the chess world champion, the best ranked chess player since 2011, and a genius, of course, and one of the best ever in chess, according not to myself, because I don't have that that saying. I mean, according to the best of in sports, in chess, alongside with Kasparov and Bob Fischer, he is considered to be one of the best of all time. And chess is, I love chess, I love playing chess, I love following chess, and it concentrates in it the most demanding it's of intellectual and emotional process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's everything in there. I mean, it's so emotional. It's very emotional. Even though you may think it's only intellectual, it's not. It's like half-half. And you have to have such a mental strength in another level. Like,
Does that, I mean, going back to our conversation at the beginning, does that relate to the mind and how it works in terms of when you say emotional, like chess is emotional, does that relate to like the id in any way, or you don't consider that anything?
yes, it is related to the ego, to be able to control things without being invaded by the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult. And at the same time, because we haven't spoken about the cognitive processes, intelligence, and that part of the mind has to be, I mean, at its highest levels also, which is really difficult because sometimes you are very good at intellectual things, but you are emotionally very poor.
Poor social intelligence. Or
yes, and so on.
Emotional intelligence.
Yes, but to play chess, you have to be the best of both.
So Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah.
So if you met him for a coffee, like, is it just to talk to him about something, or would you play chess with him? Or?
Oh, of course, I would play chess with him if I had a chance. I would be demolished. I don't know how to say demolished in like 15 moves, but I don't care.
It'd be pretty cool to say you've played against him, right? Like, it'd be pretty cool to say you've played against the world champion.
It's something unimaginable for someone like me. I mean, the best players in Brazil are proud of having lost to Magnus Carlsen, let's say, even though one of them managed to win, but they are proud of just playing him. I mean, but it's not that I would like to chat with him much. Of course, some chat with him. I would like to do some chat with him, but it's more related to being present during one day of his life.
Yeah, just the experience of
Yeah.
meeting him, and
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, this is the end of the podcast. We need to end now. I feel like we could continue this conversation. I'm sure we will. Once we've finished, we can go out into your neighborhood here and go and explore and keep on talking. But yeah, I just want to say a big thank you for your time. I really appreciate it on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks, James, for the honor to be here in our website, in our podcast. It was a big pleasure. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks very much
Great.
indeed. How you say? How?
Thanks. Thanks very much indeed. So finally, just to say, if you enjoyed our conversation, then feel free to leave a comment under this episode at schoolofduda.com. You can also leave a comment on social media, on Instagram, for example. If you'd like to support this podcast, then you can recommend it to a friend or leave a review on one of the podcast platforms. That would be really helpful. But that's it. So thank you very much for listening. I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode. Until next time.